Welcome, ACSA family, to Common Purpose, Uncommon Times. I'm Wes Smith, Executive Director at ACSA, proud to serve in that regard. You know, you've been in shelter in place a long time when your hair is longer than your COVID pants. I can't believe we're not making those essential services with hair cutting or something, because I'm struggling here, like so many of you. Hey, we're really excited today. We have one of the foremost experts on school budgets and school finance in the state, and I would say even beyond that. John Gray, the president and CEO of School Services of California, just one of those people that our leaders go to when they need advice that they can trust, numbers that they can trust relative to school finance. So, John, thanks for making time to be here on Facebook Live with the ACSA family.
Thank you very much for having me, Wes. It's an honor to be part of your program.
Yeah, thank you. Well, hey, let's just dive right into it. Last week, the governor came out with some slide deck about the budget and what had been happening, and it alarmed a lot of people. There were some pretty big numbers there that caught our attention. Why don't you speak to some of the takeaways that you saw, some of the things that really hit you the most?
Well, thank you, Wes, again for having me. So a few things. First of all, the numbers really didn't shock me. I know you and I were both around the last time. I know you were a superintendent during the Great Recession. And if you recall, those first 2 years were probably the most difficult. We were in a very long recession, but those first 2 years when we got the bad news and we actually had to unfortunately dismantle public education up and down the state to accommodate the lower funding. And the last recession hit us like a ton of bricks. It truly did. It was fast. And you may recall reading the newspaper and Salomon Brothers went belly up. Bear Stearns, a lot of national banks, and the collapse of the real estate market. And it really hit us hard and fast. This, however, is a whole nother beast. I mean, we just turned off the economy. And so I expected this one to hit us a lot faster and a lot harder. So let me first say, these are the numbers being telegraphed for the May revision. And so remember where we are in the process. You know, we got very spoiled under Jerry Brown, where pretty much whatever he said at the May revise was pretty much what we adopted, right? And we could take those numbers to the bank. The programs that he talked about and wanted, we already had a good jump on that because he was able to deliver. This is going to be quite different. First of all, the May revise, just to remind your viewers, it's an estimate. The only solid number we have right now is the cost of living adjustment, which is a calculation, and whether it will be funded or not is a whole nother story. But usually by May, they have the taxes in. Remember, you file your taxes, are due April 15th. And this year, because of the pandemic, they extended the tax deadline all the way until July. So unlike prior years under Governor Brown, or even the first year under Governor Newsom, where we would take the May revise and we could be off and packing. We pretty much knew what our budget was going to be. This year is going to be different. And so we're likely to get the May revise, and we'll talk in great detail about that. Then we're going to get an adopted budget, and it will be on time, because remember, they don't get paid unless they adopt it on time.
Yep.
But even at that point, when the state adopts its budget, we're not going to have the complete impact of this economic shutdown. And so we've already been telegraphed that we might be looking at an August revision. You might recall, and I know you remember this, Wes, but during the second year of that deep recession we had, they actually had they adopted a budget, and then 6 months later, they adopted another budget in the middle of the year. So this is going to be a long, drawn-out process, and so people need to stay tuned. They need to watch everything that you guys send out to your members and stay in touch. So my oppression, those are gigantic numbers. You hear $18 billion hit the
Right.
Prop 98. So I think of a couple of things. One, it's a 2-year hit. They're talking about 1920 and 2021. And so for 1920, if you look at the fall of the economy, uh, the, the Prop 98 guarantee, it's over appropriated. There's more than the minimum required. So I expect the state to do something in 1920 as part of the May revise. Now they've already come out and said, we're gonna keep you whole, feed kids, pay your vendors, that sort of thing, and they made the P2 date the end of February, which was all great. So I don't expect the governor to come out with something where a school district would have to go cut their budget. What's likely to happen, though, and I know you remember these, West, everyone became a cash expert for the last recession, is we're likely to get something that's called a deferral. And it was a tool used heavily during the last recession. Simplistically stated, the 1920 is going to be over appropriated. And instead of just letting it ride, they're probably going to lower the amount in 1920. So what they do typically is they do a deferral where you are told, expect the revenue. We're not going to give you the revenue. We're going to give it to you in the following year. So a cash deferral feels a lot different than a cut to, let's say, your LCFF, where you have to go make significant reductions. It is significant, though, and superintendents and leadership teams, cabinets are going to have to become, again, really familiar with cash management. So 1920, I expect something. It's likely a deferral. The action taken is primarily the chief business officials got to figure out how to manage cash, and of course the superintendent does too. But that then translates into what's going to happen in 2021, and as we all know, that's what we're really waiting for, to find out how much we're talking about. And if you just do the simple math and figure that K-12 is 89% of Prop 98, and you divide it between the years, it is still a significant amount. And so I expect when it comes out, you're going to see a combination of deferrals, meaning delay in payments, cash management issues, combined with cuts. And if you just do a postmortem on the last recession, where did they cut us, Wes? I know you remember this. They cut us right on the revenue limits. And so if you're new to leadership in a school district, that's an old history term, revenue limits. And so think about the LCFF and think about the base grant. That's the one thing I can say has the most similar characteristics with revenue limits. And recall, they made a lion's share of the cut to revenue limits. They cut some categorical programs, which we don't have anymore. That got all thrown into the LCFF. And the one thing they didn't cut during the last recession was those dollars set aside for poor students, free and reduced price meal students, English learners. We had a categorical program called EIA, Economic Impact Aid. And if you looked at what EIA was for, it was just think of your supplemental and concentration grant dollars. So the big question is, if they're gonna cut your LCFF, are they going to just cut the base grant and leave the existing amounts alone for supplemental and concentration grant dollars? Or are they actually going to cut the base grant and then let the formula work on a lower base grant, right? The supplemental concentration grant dollars. If you look at how they behaved last time, it's probably across the base grant, which would be very unfortunate. Because, and it's funny, I've been having conversations with superintendents, and they jokingly say, because remember in January when they came up with the budget, I know ACSA wasn't excited, we weren't excited. A little measly COLA and special ed costs going through the roof. There was some special ed relief. Pensions, step and column. And now, I mean, that seems like a great budget. But
we'd be dancing in the streets with that budget, wouldn't we?
yes, we would. Yes, we would. So I know that's a long, drawn out answer, but so I expect it not to be a very fun May revise. Oh, the other thing I will add, and I think it's important to your viewers, and I know ACSA provides outstanding services and recommendations in this area, but your members need to be prepared. This hit's going to come. It's funny when people ask the people who started, let's say after the last recession, would they really cut school districts? Oh yeah, they will, and so it's coming our way. But is to get their mind in the right frame of mind, start educating their stakeholders. But what they did last time, and I expect this time also, is they provided tools. And by the way, none of these tools are good for kids, but they are financial tools to help you get through the crisis. So they allowed districts to sweep unspent balances from restricted programs. They relaxed class size language. I know you remember they used to have K3 class size reduction. That was the death of K3 class size reduction, no longer requiring that. They allowed school districts to shorten the instructional year from 180 days to 175. And of course, they didn't automatically give you the savings. You had to go negotiate that. So the point being, I expect it to be pretty significant cuts, and along with that, some tools that will, help you, even though they're not positive for students, and likely some cash deferrals. So your members are gonna have to be on their toes, and so I'll stay with that. The one I don't want to forget this. And I remember vividly the last recession, and I had school-age children, and some were in elementary school, some were in middle school at the time. And I just remember the school district where my kids went. They did such a Herculean job of managing their budget in a manner that I got to throw away this phone. It keeps going off. In a manner where, as parents, we didn't really feel that much. And so school districts stepped up statewide, and really the impact on parents, we didn't feel it as much as that school district did. And so Herculean effort, and I think ACSA is going to be a key player in ensuring that all these districts get through whatever this is, come out the other side. Let's just say that.
Yeah, man, so much in there. In fact, you've already answered a bunch of the questions that have come in. People were asking about the prospect of deferrals. You're absolutely expecting that. Yeah. Where do we think the hits will come to the base funding? That was one of the things that people have been asking about. As we look at kind of projecting, is school services saying, hey, I'd start looking at this amount, this percent of a cut? Are you even getting into that right now, or are you just giving advice about, protect your cash, things like that?
Yeah, it's very difficult, because whatever number we come up with is wrong. Again, because it is all based on projections, and so if I were to guess, I think before we're done with this, we could be looking at a 10-15% cut. And think about that, Wes, when your budget is 85-90% people, it's going to be very tough to get through this with not impacting the lives of our employees. And so at this point, we're reluctant to come up with an exact dollar, especially 2 days before the release of the May revise, so people can play this later and show how wrong I was. But we do think it's going to be significant, and the key will be is how long we're in this. Okay. If you looked at the last recession and all the key economic indicators that we typically look at to get the feel on how the national, world, or state economy is doing, last time, every single indicator was had signs showing that the recession was coming, and quite frankly, no one predicted it last time. But this time, all the economic indicators were humming, meaning they were really good. Stock market, unemployment, labor participation, all those things were pretty much humming. Now they don't look that way anymore. We'll show you some charts in a few days on what they actually look like. So the question is, how fast do we recover? And that last recession, oh my gosh, that was a long, a long recession, and I remember, quite frankly, that those first 2 years were Armageddon. It felt like, and then after that, it was kind of just a malaise. I mean, we're not doing things for our employees. We're not really doing anything above and beyond the prior year for our students, and unfortunately, I think we have a whole generation of students that got shortchanged. So I guess I would say the key that we're looking at is how fast we recover from this. The faster, the better.
It sounds like you have hope in that regard, and as I've heard other, economists, they'll say the variables are very different going into this, right?
Yes.
We closed down California
yes.
in a day, right? And that's very different from all of the subprime lending and all those other things that were going on in the Great Recession. So right. do you have hope that we'll have a faster recovery?
I always hope.
Optimism.
I always hope.
Right?
Yeah, and actually, if you look at what the LAO did, they just came out with their report at the end of last week, and they do two scenarios. They show a V-shaped recovery, meaning boom, we bounce right out of it. Actually, they don't show I misspoke. They show a U-shaped recovery, like come out of it pretty quick, and an L-shaped recovery. I'm optimistic. I'm hopeful that we have a pretty fast recovery because, again, like you said, Wes, we've never done this before. We didn't just turn off the economy when every economic indicator, was going like gangbusters. So we will see how fast does California get back to work will be a key indicator.
Well, a big part of it, too, is how safe we are when we get back to work.
Yes.
So we can keep from having another spike, because then that sends us into another shelter in place, which really make it hard to climb out of this. So as people are getting back to work, and I'm not talking about public education right now, but even then, when in the fall we do get back, everyone's got to do so safely, or else we're defeating the whole purpose of getting back to work. Hey, you mentioned a minute ago, because I think this is important. You talked about flexibilities. As we look at the role of public education in driving the economy, right? Folks can't get back to work if they're at home providing childcare for their own children. They need us not just to educate, feed, and keep kids safe. They need us to get parents back to work.
Yes, indeed they do.
And so there's a real interest on the state's part for schools to open safely when they can, right? As soon as it's safe for them to do so, which is a big if and when, right? But
right.
That being said, they need us. They can't cut and not do anything to help us. So one of the things we might see, as you brought up, are some flexibilities. Are there some flexibilities that school services is advocating for, to try to help the legislators help us, if you will?
Yes, we're advocating every flexibility you can comprehend, and so we went to the playbook of last time and suggest those ones that we thought were helpful and good as far as helping districts go through. Plus, we're adding things that they didn't go last time. I mean, when you say, you can reduce the school year by 5 days. Now go ahead and negotiate that cut. You know how difficult that is, and it pits us against labor. And so while it's welcome, they gave us a tool to help get us through this. It really was difficult to do. So we're advocating for as much flexibility as we can possibly have, and so yeah, I know ACSA is very active on this front too. So
we're putting most of our effort here.
Yes.
Everyone on our team is really playing some role in trying to protect as much of the budget as we can so that our folks can educate, can protect, can feed students, and can help our economy. It's going to
So I'll just say another thing that I recall from the last recession, and I know it's primarily your members that are watching. One of the casualties of the last recession, I know the statewides like you lost a ton of membership, and I hope that doesn't happen again because, quite frankly, they need ACSA to advocate on their behalf, and the more that are you know continue their membership and support ACSA, that's going to be important because one of my beefs from the last recession, and I think we talked about it, you and I, Wes, was, everyone talks about fair share cuts. And of course, I would argue that education is one of the few investments that our state makes. Everything else is consumption. And not to say that the consumption parts of the budget aren't important, but education is the true investment. And each year they would cut us, they would announce, we're going to do this in a fair manner. Education's going to take their fair share of the cut along with everybody else. But what really happened, which was very disappointing, to cut education, if you're at the state level, that's pretty darn easy. You just don't send the check, right? You just turn it off, kind of like we turned off the economy, right? I'm going to cut education X billion of dollars. Let's just don't send the money. The rest of the cuts actually have to be executed by the state. And if they involve negotiations, they're going to involve negotiations. And as all of us know, if you've ever cut your budget, typically you overshoot it a little bit to allow for that slippage. And every year we would take our full cut. Education would take the full cut. Everybody else, when the cut was announced, they were going to take the same fair share. But doing a postmortem on what actually happened, they never made their full cut. There was always some slippage. And then the next year, let's do it fair again. And over the years that accumulated. And so when we recovered and we got the lion's share of the new money coming in with the LCFF, the gap closure, that was definitely warranted. We as an industry received more cuts than the rest of the budget. And quite frankly, we're the one part of the budget that most taxpayers care about. And so I hope this time, and I know you will be watching them, ACSA will, but we will too. We'll keep an eye on them.
And I appreciate what you said about our role, because I'll tell you, I think in difficult times, our leaders in the field need us, both ACSA and school services, more than ever. In recession, I paid for my administrators, their ACSA dues every single year without fail, because they needed the support, they needed the protection, they needed the advocacy. Because if not for management groups advocating for those rights, it's a one-sided conversation, and that's a dangerous place to be. And so I think we're going to be more valuable to our members over the next several years than we have the last 7. And I think we've done some great work for them. I would also say that you've mentioned this a couple of times, and I think it's important. While we have to get our stakeholders prepared, our communities prepared for what's going to happen in a new reality for a lot of folks, right? Because we've had a good run here. We've also got to work really, really hard to build those relationships with labor. We've got to get to not just a table, but when we can, let's get to the coffee shop. Let's sit down. Let's build these relationships. Let's figure out together how we can do this. These times are going to require stronger labor management relations, and groups like the LMI and others, ACSA. We have great relationships with state labor. I think it's going to be a time for us to really get involved and help, because these are difficult decisions, and you can't just unilaterally impose a lot of them, as you and I know, and as you've alluded. And so we've really got to work on those relationships. And if we don't, it won't matter how safe we can start the school year. There'll be places where it just will not start. And that's reprehensible. So we've got to work on that.
Yeah, I couldn't agree more, Wes. I agree 100%. If you look at the last recession, The ones that got through it the best, when I say the ones, the stakeholders of a school district that got through it the best were those that recognized the problem wasn't each other. It's not management because it was a state problem, recognizing that common enemy, let's say, that being the economy, and school district funding, and how to problem solve together. It's a joint issue. And what I tell unions all the time, I said, there's nobody who cares more about attracting and retaining through compensation and outstanding working conditions than the superintendent. And so if you look at those that fared the best through the recession, it was the ones that problem solved together and sometimes made sacrifices early. By doing it early, you had to do less, right? And so your point is very well taken.
Yeah, and there are great things that folks can work on and build the relationship. We did some SERPs that benefited our labor groups, some of those early retirement programs. We even did them in consecutive years because we could make the numbers work. Our folks appreciated that. So we built trust. We built some momentum with things like that. And then we could dig into some of the more difficult things. But because we had the relationship and we had some successes, we got to where we needed to get.
Right.
Hey, John, I'm grateful that you took some time to jump on, to share your thoughts. And, like you said, you can't quote too much because then 2 days from now, people are going to use that video against you.
The number is.
So you navigated those waters really, really well. Any last comment you want to make before we let you sign off and get to that phone?
No, I think I'm good. Those were good questions, Wes. And anytime I'm happy to have a conversation with you. We go back a long way, and we'll continue communicating through this. I guess if I was going to leave people with one last thing, one of the areas that really suffered was how much we invested in ourselves through staff development. And if there's ever a time for staff development, it's when it's raining and it's going to start raining. But unfortunately, when we come into tough times, that's one of the things that suffers. And so I would encourage your members to continue to invest in themselves to be the best they can be, because those districts are really going to need their leadership through tough times. And I think ACSA provides that avenue. So on behalf of all of us at School Services, Wes, thanks for having us today.
Oh, my pleasure, man. Thanks for all that you're doing, and wish your team the best. Thanks a lot.
All right, you too. Yeah. Take care.
He just mentioned professional development, and I'll tell you, we're excited because, again, we look at this crisis as an opportunity for us to innovate, for us to get better. We are transitioning and have been working on it, but now we've pivoted. We've transitioned hard into online digital learning. We're going to roll out some exciting things this coming year because as people aren't allowed to travel, budgets won't support that. You still need support and development. And so we're going to get better at providing that via distance learning. And we're excited. And just this last week, we have evidence that it can work. Last week, we had our first ever virtual leadership assembly and board meeting. We elected our new vice president, Dr. Aaron Simon. So we did all of the governance that needed to happen, important governance. We did it virtually. It was awesome. It wasn't perfect, but it worked well. People were engaged. We had breakouts. It was a very, very positive experience. And it demonstrates that not only can we'll do this this coming year and in perpetuity. We're going to learn from these lessons and get better ongoing, not just for 1 year, because these innovations will serve us. I wanted to brag about that and the team and everybody that put that on last week. Last week as well, you remember that our video got choppy and you couldn't see some of the pictures or the audio was delayed, so it wasn't the right picture with the right story. And I thought there were some really, really powerful things last week that you sent to me. And so I want to go back, and if you've already seen it, you could log out anyway. But I wanted to show that this week and give it its due because there are just some really, really powerful things there. So let me share some of those with you. All right, so last week we had some powerful images, and the audio was delayed, it was choppy, so it wasn't matched to the right photo. And I really want to give those folks their due. All of you that are sending these important, inspirational photos and stories. I want to go back to last week's and share that with you so that you can hear who's actually doing the work that you're seeing. So thanks for letting me share this with you. As you're going to see in this, there are a lot of positive examples of the amazing teachers that are all over the state right now connecting with their students. This is one from Terry Rufert, superintendent, loyal ACSA member, and some of her teachers connecting with their students and letting them know, the students, that they're there for them, that they're not alone. They also had a great video in Sundale where the ASB president did a virtual Spirit Week, and they did dress-up days and the whole deal, and they did it virtually. I thought that was just a great example. And here's another teacher. This is a teacher from Walnut Valley USD. Her name is Shelly Yamashiro, and she created a green screen in her house so that she can really provide engaging stories, lessons for her students. I thought that's innovative. And here, Dr. Vandekamp in Pleasanton Unified, they have teachers doing these distance learning programs to support other teachers. So teachers helping teachers improve their trade, improve their ability to deliver content virtually, inspiring. They're doing great work there. Those videos are high quality. Here's Superintendent McDonald from Lompoc Unified. It's a special day there. It was School Lunch Hero Day, and he went out with food services in buses and delivered food to needy families. I can only imagine how excited those students are to get those meals. And I'll tell you, when you talk about hero, Superintendent McDonald, you were a hero that day. They're also in Lompoc doing virtual packets, and virtual or distance learning doesn't look the same everywhere, but they put extra time in so that these distance learning packets not just educated students, but encouraged them, cheered them up, if you will. A great example of what we can do to connect with our students. Terrence Davis is one of our members as superintendent, and he's having a conversation here with high school students about their graduation activities. And while they're not smiling a lot, because these are tough conversations, he's having the tough conversation with them, engaging them and helping them be a part of the solution. So really wanted to give a shout out to him and that communication. And here we have one of our students, Wyman Chan, received $40,000. That is a $40,000 smile right there. He got that from the College Board Scholarship. Way to go. I love this one. Susan Keeler in Dunsmuir sent me this. This young lady in the car with her mom made some safety masks for teachers. And then she also wrote this note and says, "This is for you. Me, Tenki, and Mom made it for all teachers. I hope you like it. And fold the tissue paper and put it in the mask. I do not want you to get sick. Bye, and I love you." Love that student and that service mindset. Beautiful. Here's a teacher again, Lori Campbell. She's a third grade teacher in Lorenzo Manor. And she knows that her students need supplies and food. So she's gone out and bought these things on her own. And she puts care packets together and takes them around to students in need. What a great example of the best of our profession. And then here's a district, San Benito High School, that they're really trying to help with mental wellness. And this was to kick off their Mental Health Awareness Week. And they invited everybody to do positive signs in chalk on the pavement and to send those in and encourage one another and provide messages of support. They also, and I saw this on Facebook, they do Circle of Friends where they have students with disabilities meet up with their non-disabled peers and have these weekly group meetings. What a great example of just the genuine concern and care that all of you have for all of your students and the ways you're innovating to bring them together in these unprecedented times. Folks, as I've said, picture is worth 1,000 words. And each week we need hundreds of thousands of positive words. So keep sending those pictures, keep sending those videos. We'll have them revised in a couple of days. ACSA will have that dissected for you. We'll get you some feedback on that. We'll continue to advocate. Some of you have already sent messages in. You put in the chat what you need. We're listening. We're working with you. We're going to help with grassroots. Someone asked about that. We're going to get you grassroots packets so you can advocate at your level as well. And as John said, we're going to get through this. Our concept here at ACSA is we're not just going to survive, we're going to thrive. So thank you for all you do. We'll see you next week on Common Purpose, Uncommon Times. Thanks, everybody. Be safe. Be well.